Chapter 1: The Perfect Suburbia. Maplewood Estates was the epitome of suburban perfection. Rows of identical houses with manicured lawns, white picket fences, and flower beds bursting with color lined every street. It was a place where neighbors waved cheerfully as they passed each other on morning walks, children played safely in cul-de-sacs, and life seemed to hum along without a single ripple of discord. At least, that's what everyone believed. The Homeowners Association, HOA, was the invisible hand that kept this utopia running smoothly. They enforced strict rules about lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, parking restrictions, and even the types of holiday decorations allowed. To most residents, these regulations were benign, annoying at worst, but necessary for preserving property values and community harmony. Few questioned the HOA's authority or wondered how it managed to operate so seamlessly. But not everyone was content to live under its watchful eye. Chapter 2: The Newcomer. When Sarah and Mark Thompson moved into 14 Maple Lane last spring, they thought they'd finally found their dream home. The house was spacious, the neighborhood friendly, and the schools excellent for their 2 young daughters. What more could they ask for? Sarah quickly immersed herself in the community, attending block parties and volunteering at the local library. Mark, however, remained skeptical. A software engineer by trade, he had an analytical mind that bristled at arbitrary rules. He didn't understand why his mailbox had to be painted a specific shade of blue or why he couldn't park his work van in the driveway overnight. "It's just bureaucracy," Sarah assured him one evening as they unpacked boxes in the living room. "Everyone follows the rules here because it keeps things nice." Mark shrugged but said nothing. Still, something about the HOA felt off to him. Their letters were always typed in formal language, signed simply as "the board," with no names attached. And when Mark tried to attend a meeting to voice his concerns about the parking restriction, he discovered there weren't any public meetings scheduled. "Why is everything so secretive?" he muttered to Sarah later that week. "They're just trying to keep things organized," she replied, though her tone lacked conviction. Then came the first letter. Chapter 3: The First Warning. It arrived on a crisp autumn morning, slipped silently under their front door while they were still asleep. The envelope bore no return address, only the words, "Attention, residents of 14 Maple Lane," typed neatly across the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, we have observed irregularities in your compliance with Article 3, Section B of the Maplewood Estates Covenants. Specifically, we note that your backyard fence exceeds the permitted height by 6 inches. Please rectify this issue within 7 days to avoid further action." There was no signature, no contact information, just the ominous phrase, "further action," hanging like a threat at the bottom of the page. "What the hell does this mean?" Mark exclaimed, holding up the letter during breakfast. Sarah frowned. "I thought the fence was fine. Didn't we check all those measurements before we built it?" "We did." Mark snapped. "And now they're saying it's too tall. This is ridiculous." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed to call the HOA office listed on their welcome packet. After several rings, a polite but robotic voice informed her that all inquiries must be submitted via email. Frustrated, she typed out a message asking for clarification. Hours turned into days, and they heard nothing back. By the end of the week, another letter appeared beneath their door. Further action initiated. Chapter 4: The Unraveling. Panic began to creep into their lives. Overnight, someone spray-painted the word "violator" in bold red letters across their garage door. When Mark called the police to report vandalism, the officer who responded seemed unusually disinterested. "Maybe you should talk to the HOA," he suggested vaguely before leaving. That night, Sarah woke up to the sound of footsteps outside their bedroom window. She nudged Mark awake, and together they crept downstairs to investigate. Peering through the blinds, they saw nothing but shadows moving between the trees in their backyard. "This is insane," Sarah whispered, clutching Mark's arm. The next day, their trash cans were overturned, and their mailbox dangled from its post, bent nearly in half. No one in the neighborhood admitted to seeing anything unusual. In fact, their once friendly neighbors now avoided making eye contact altogether. Desperate for answers, Mark decided to dig deeper. He spent hours poring over old records at the county courthouse, searching for any mention of the HOA's origins. What he found chilled him to the bone. The HOA wasn't registered with the state as a legitimate organization. There were no official documents, no board members listed, no financial disclosures. It was as if the entire entity existed solely within the confines of Maplewood Estates. Chapter 5: The Secret Meeting. One evening, unable to shake the feeling that they were being watched, Mark followed a hunch. He snuck out after dark, determined to uncover the truth. His destination was the community center, a nondescript building near the entrance of the subdivision where HOA meetings supposedly took place. As he approached, he noticed faint light spilling from the cracks around the windows. Voices murmured inside, low and indistinct. Pressing his ear against the wall, Mark strained to listen. "They're resisting," said one voice, cold and mechanical. "They always do," replied another, tinged with amusement. "But they'll learn. Everyone does." Mark's heart raced. Who were these people? And what did they mean by resisting? Suddenly, a third voice cut through the conversation. "The Thompsons are becoming a problem. If they persist, we may need to escalate." Before Mark could process what he'd heard, the door creaked open behind him. He spun around, heart pounding, but saw no one. Still, the sensation of being watched grew unbearable. Without thinking, he bolted back toward his house, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Chapter 6: The Breaking Point. Back home, Mark relayed everything to Sarah, who listened in stunned silence. For the first time, she shared his unease. Something sinister lurked beneath the surface of their perfect neighborhood, and they were caught in its crosshairs. Determined to fight back, they drafted a detailed complaint and sent it to the city council, the Better Business Bureau, and every local news outlet they could think of. But their efforts yielded nothing. Emails went unanswered, phone calls unreturned. It was as if the world beyond Maplewood Estates refused to acknowledge their existence. Then came the final straw. One night, as they tucked their daughters into bed, they heard a loud crash from downstairs. Racing to investigate, they found their front door wide open, the lock shattered. Footsteps echoed through the house, heavy and deliberate. "Who's there?" Mark shouted, grabbing a baseball bat from the hall closet. No response. Just the sound of retreating footsteps and the slam of the back door. When they checked the kitchen table, they found yet another letter waiting for them. "Eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Failure to comply will result in consequences." Chapter 7: The Escape. Terrified but resolute, the Thompsons packed their belongings in record time. They knew staying in Maplewood Estates was no longer an option. As they loaded their car under the cover of darkness, Sarah glanced nervously at the empty streets. "Do you think anyone will help us if we tell them what's happening?" she asked softly. Mark shook his head. "They're too afraid, or too complicit. We're on our own." Just as they prepared to leave, headlights appeared at the end of the street. A black SUV slowly rolled toward them, its engine purring ominously. "Go!" Mark yelled, jumping into the driver's seat. Tires screeched as they sped away, leaving Maplewood Estates, and its secrets, behind. Epilogue: The Legacy. Months later, the Thompsons settled into a new life far from Maplewood Estates. Though safe, they couldn't shake the memories of what they'd endured. One day, While browsing online forums, Mark stumbled upon a thread discussing mysterious disappearances in suburban neighborhoods across the country. Each account described eerily similar experiences: intrusive HOAs, escalating threats, and inexplicable fear among residents. Could it be coincidence? Or was there something far darker at play? As Mark scrolled through the posts, one comment stood out. "If you see the letters HOA, run. Don't look back."